The wagon limped into Nebraska City on a blistering July afternoon in 1876. Its single occupant a woman whose face bore a scar that ran from temple to jaw like a river carved through stone. Isaac Zimmerman had been leaning against the post outside the general store when he saw her, and something in the way she held the reins with white-knuckled determination made him straighten up from his lazy stance. The woman wore black from head to toe despite the oppressive heat, her dress dusty from what must have been weeks of travel. Her dark blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and even from a distance, he could see the exhaustion etched into every line of her body. The horses pulling her wagon looked just as worn, their heads hanging low as they plodded down the main street. Isaac was 26 years old, a ranch hand who had worked the Chamberlain spread just outside town for the past 8 years. He had seen plenty of travelers pass through Nebraska City, but something about this woman caught his attention and would not let go. Maybe it was the way she sat so straight despite her obvious fatigue, or maybe it was the flash of defiance he caught in her eyes when a group of men outside the saloon stopped their conversation to stare at her. She pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the boarding house, and Isaac found his feet moving before his brain had fully decided to cross the street. He reached her just as she was climbing down, and he saw her wince as her feet hit the ground. "Madam," he said, removing his hat. "You look like you could use some help." She turned to face him fully, and he got his first clear look at the scar. It was old, healed over but still angry looking in the harsh sunlight. Her eyes were green, the color of prairie grass in spring, and they held a wariness that made his chest tighten. "I can manage," she said, her voice hoarse from dust and disuse. "I am sure you can," Isaac replied, "but that does not mean you have to." She studied him for a long moment, and he stood still under her scrutiny, letting her take his measure. He was tall, broad-shouldered from years of hard work, with dark hair that needed a trim and brown eyes that his mother had always said were too kind for his own good. He wore simple clothes, a blue cotton shirt and worn denim pants, dusty boots that had seen better days. "My horses need water and feed," she finally said, "and I need a room." "The boarding house is decent," Isaac told her. "Mrs. Walsh runs it. She is fair and keeps a clean establishment. As for your horses, I can take them to the livery if you would like. Jim Fletcher owns it, and he will treat them right." The woman hesitated again, and Isaac could see the internal struggle playing out across her features. She did not want to trust him, that much was clear, but she was also at the end of her rope. "I am Isaac Zimmerman," he offered. "I work at the Chamberlain Ranch just west of town. Been here 8 years and pretty much everyone knows me. You can ask Mrs. Walsh about me if you want." "Penelope Easton," she said after another pause. "And yes, I will ask." Isaac smiled at that. Smart. This way, Mrs. Easton. He helped her with her bags, 2 small trunks that felt far too light for someone who looked like they had traveled a long way. She followed him into the boarding house, moving stiffly, and he wondered how many days she had spent sitting on that wagon bench. Mrs. Walsh was a plump woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at Penelope, and her expression softened in a way that Isaac rarely saw. "Come in, dear," she said. "You look half dead on your feet. Isaac, put those bags down and go fetch some hot water from the kitchen. This woman needs a bath and a hot meal." "Yes, madam," Isaac said, setting the trunks down carefully. "Is he trustworthy?" Penelope asked Mrs. Walsh, and there was no apology in her voice for asking. "Isaac, he is one of the good ones," Mrs. Walsh said firmly. "Works hard, keeps his word, and I have never heard an unkind word said about him. You can trust him with your horses and your belongings both." Penelope nodded slowly, and some of the tension seemed to leave her shoulders. "Thank you." Isaac returned with the hot water, then excused himself to take care of her wagon and horses. As he led them to the livery, he found himself thinking about the scar on her face and the black dress that marked her as a widow. What had brought her to Nebraska City, and what had put that look of haunted determination in her eyes? Jim Fletcher was in the livery, working on shoeing a mare. He looked up as Isaac led the horses in. "Those are not yours," Jim observed. "They belong to a woman who just arrived. She looks like she has been traveling for weeks. These horses need some extra care." Jim nodded, wiping his hands on his leather apron. "I will take good care of them. She planning to stay?" "I do not know," Isaac admitted, "but I hope so." Jim gave him a knowing look. "Like that, is it?" "I do not know what you mean," Isaac said, but he could feel heat creeping up his neck. "Sure you do not," Jim said with a grin. "Get out of here. I have got this handled." Isaac walked back to the boarding house, but Penelope had already been taken upstairs. He stood in the front hall for a moment, feeling foolish, then headed back to his small room at the ranch. He had work to do tomorrow, cattle to check on, fences to mend. But as he lay in his narrow bed that night, he found himself thinking about green eyes and a scar that spoke of pain survived. The next morning, Isaac was back in town earlier than he needed to be, making excuses to himself about needing supplies. The truth was, he wanted to see if Penelope was all right. He found her sitting on the porch of the boarding house, a cup of coffee in her hands, staring out at the street with an expression he could not quite read. "Good morning, Mrs. Easton," he said, climbing the steps. She looked up at him, and he saw that some of the exhaustion had faded from her face. The bath and rest had done her good. "Mr. Zimmerman, I wanted to thank you for your help yesterday, and to apologize for my suspicion." "No apology needed," Isaac said, settling onto the porch railing. "A woman traveling alone has every right to be cautious. Where did you come from, if you do not mind my asking?" She was quiet for a long moment, and he thought she might not answer. Then she said, "Kansas. A small town you have probably never heard of. My husband died 6 months ago, and his family made it very clear that I was not welcome to stay." "I am sorry for your loss," Isaac said, and meant it. "Do not be," Penelope replied, her voice flat. "It was not a love match, and he was not a kind man. His death freed me in more ways than one." The honesty of her statement took Isaac by surprise. Most widows he knew clung to the pretense of mourning, even when everyone knew the truth of their marriages. "What brought you to Nebraska City?" he asked. "I had to go somewhere," she said simply. "I had a little money saved, enough for the wagon and horses and to get me started somewhere new. I picked a direction and kept going until I found a place that felt right." "And does this feel right?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Isaac felt something shift in his chest. "I do not know yet," she said, "but it feels like maybe it could be." Over the next few weeks, Isaac found himself spending more and more time in town. He helped Penelope find work at the general store, where her neat handwriting and skill with numbers made her invaluable to old Mr. Peterson, who ran the place. He watched as she slowly began to relax, the hard edges of her wariness softening just a bit as she realized that Nebraska City was not the hostile place she had left behind. They fell into an easy friendship. Isaac would stop by the store when he came to town for supplies, and they would talk about small things: the weather, the latest gossip, the books she was reading. She had a sharp wit that delighted him and a quiet strength that he admired more with each passing day. One evening in late August, Isaac gathered his courage and asked her to have dinner with him at the hotel restaurant. It was the fanciest place in town, and he saw her eyes widen slightly at the invitation. "Is that proper?" she asked. "I am still in mourning." "Are you?" Isaac asked gently. "Truly?" Penelope looked down at her black dress, then back up at him. "No," she admitted. "I suppose I am not. The black dress is armor more than mourning." "Then have dinner with me," Isaac said. "Just two friends sharing a meal." "Just two friends," she repeated, and there was something in her voice that made him think she wanted it to be more, even if she was not ready to admit it yet. The dinner was a success. They talked for hours, long after their plates had been cleared away. Isaac told her about growing up in Nebraska, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 18, about building a life for himself through hard work and determination. Penelope shared more about her past, about a father who had sold her to the highest bidder when she was 19, about a husband who had given her the scar on her face in a drunken rage 2 years into their marriage. "I thought about leaving," she said quietly. "But where could I go? I had no money, no family who would take me back. So I stayed and learned to make myself small, to avoid his anger when I could and endure it when I could not." Isaac's hands clenched into fists under the table. "He had no right to treat you that way." "No," Penelope agreed. "But rights and reality are often two different things, especially for women. When he died, his heart giving out in the middle of the night, I felt nothing but relief. His mother accused me of poisoning him, even though the doctor said it was natural causes. She turned the whole town against me, said I was cursed, that the scar on my face was the mark of the devil. I left before they could drive me out." "You are not cursed," Isaac said fiercely. "You are the bravest person I have ever met." She looked at him with tears shining in her eyes. "You barely know me." "I know enough," he said. "I know that you survived things that would have broken most people. I know that you had the courage to leave everything behind and start over. I know that you are kind and smart and funny, and I know that I would very much like to keep spending time with you if you will let me." "Isaac," she whispered, and his name on her lips sounded like a prayer. "I am not asking for anything you are not ready to give," he continued. "I just want you to know that I see you, Penelope. Not the scar, not the widow's weeds, not the story people will try to write about you. I see you, and I think you are remarkable." A single tear tracked down her cheek, following the line of her scar. "No one has ever said anything like that to me before." "Then they were fools," Isaac said simply. After that night, something shifted between them. The friendship was still there, but underneath, it ran a current of something deeper, something that made Isaac's heart race when she smiled at him and made Penelope blush when their hands accidentally touched. September brought cooler weather and the start of harvest season. Isaac was busier at the ranch, but he still made time to see Penelope every few days. They took walks along the Missouri River, talking about everything and nothing. He brought her wildflowers that made her laugh, and she baked him cookies that were slightly burnt but that he ate every crumb of, because she had made them for him. One Sunday, in early October, Isaac borrowed a horse and buggy from the ranch and took Penelope on a picnic. They drove out to a spot he knew, a clearing on a bluff that overlooked the river valley. The leaves were turning gold and red, and the air had that crisp quality that came with autumn. They spread out a blanket and unpacked the basket Mrs. Walsh had helped him prepare. Cold chicken and fresh bread, cheese and apples and a jar of lemonade. They ate and talked and laughed, and when they were finished, they lay on their backs looking up at the clouds. "I never thought I could be this happy," Penelope said softly. "I did not know this kind of peace existed." Isaac rolled onto his side to look at her. "You deserve this and so much more." She turned her head to meet his gaze. "Isaac, I need to tell you something. I need you to understand what you are getting into if you keep courting me, because that is what this is it not? You are courting me." "I hope so," he said, "if that is all right with you." "More than all right," she said. "But you need to know that I cannot have children. My husband made sure of that with his fists and his boots. The doctor said my body is too damaged." Isaac's heart broke at the matter-of-fact way she said it, as if she were discussing the weather. "Penelope, I am so sorry. I know you probably want a family," she continued, looking back up at the sky. "Most men do, and I would understand if that changes things between us." "Hey," Isaac said gently, reaching over to take her hand. "Look at me." She did, and he could see the fear in her eyes, the bracing for rejection. "I care about you," he said. "You, Penelope, not some imaginary future or a house full of children. You. If we can have children someday, that would be wonderful. If we cannot, that would be fine too. All I want is you exactly as you are." "You say that now," she whispered. "I will say it tomorrow and next week and next year," Isaac replied. "I will say it for as long as you will listen. You are enough, Penelope. You have always been enough." She sat up suddenly, and for a moment Isaac thought he had said something wrong. But then she was leaning toward him, her hand cupping his cheek, and she kissed him. It was soft and sweet and tentative, and Isaac felt like his heart might burst from his chest. He kissed her back carefully, not wanting to push, letting her set the pace. When she pulled back, she was crying, but she was also smiling. "I love you," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I know it is too soon, and maybe you do not feel the same way, but I love you, Isaac Zimmerman, and I needed you to know." "Too soon?" Isaac laughed, pulling her into his arms. "Penelope, I fell in love with you the moment I saw you climb down from that wagon. I just did not want to scare you off by saying it too fast." She laughed through her tears, burying her face in his chest. "We are both fools then." "The best kind of fools," Isaac agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. They stayed on that bluff until the sun began to set, wrapped in each other's arms, talking about a future that had once seemed impossible to Penelope, and that Isaac had stopped believing he would find. They made no concrete plans, but they did not need to. The promise was there in every word, every touch, every shared glance. As Isaac drove them back to town, Penelope leaned against his shoulder, and he thought about how much his life had changed in just 3 months. He had gone from being a lonely ranch hand to a man in love, and it was all because a scarred widow had rolled into town in a dusty wagon. The first frost came in late October, and with it came a problem. The boarding house was raising its rates for the winter, and Penelope did not make enough at the general store to afford the increase. She was trying to hide her worry, but Isaac could see it in the tension around her eyes, and the way she counted and recounted her money at night. He had been thinking about asking her to marry him, but he wanted to do it right, wanted to wait until he had something more to offer her than a ranch hand's wages and a room in the bunkhouse. But when she came to him one evening, her face tight with stress, and told him she might have to move into a smaller room with 3 other women, Isaac knew he could not wait any longer. "Marry me," he said. Penelope stared at him. "What, marry me?" Isaac repeated. "I know I do not have much. I have been saving my wages for years, and I have almost enough for a down payment on a small piece of land. It will not be much at first, probably just a cabin and a few acres, but we could build something together. You would not have to worry about where you will live or how you will afford it. We could build a life, Penelope, together." "Isaac, I cannot ask you to do that," she said, but there was hope shining in her eyes. "You are not asking, I am offering. I love you and I want to spend my life with you. I was always going to ask, I just wanted to wait until I had more to give you. But if you need me now, then I am here. Your journey ends with me, Penelope, tonight, tomorrow, and every day after. What do you say?" She was crying again, but she was also nodding. "Yes. Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." He swept her into his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, not caring that they were standing in the middle of the street where anyone could see. They were married a week later in the small church at the edge of town. Penelope wore a dress the color of cream that Mrs. Walsh had helped her make, and she carried wildflowers that Isaac had picked that morning. The ceremony was simple, with just a handful of people in attendance, but it was perfect. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Isaac kissed his bride and felt like the luckiest man in Nebraska. Penelope looked at him with such love and trust that he silently vowed to spend every day proving that he was worthy of it. They spent their wedding night at the hotel, the same place where they had shared their first real dinner together. Isaac was gentle and patient, mindful of Penelope's past, and determined to show her that love did not have to come with pain. She cried afterward, clinging to him, and told him that she had not known it could be like that, tender and sweet and full of joy. "This is how it is supposed to be," Isaac murmured, holding her close. "This is how it will always be between us. I will never hurt you, Penelope. I swear it on my life." "I know," she whispered. "I trust you, Isaac, completely." They moved into a small house on the edge of town that Isaac rented while they saved for their land. It was tiny, just 2 rooms and a lean-to kitchen, but it was theirs. Penelope made curtains for the windows and rugs for the floor, and Isaac built her shelves for the books she loved. They furnished it slowly with pieces bought second-hand or made by Isaac's own hands. Winter settled in, and they spent the long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other or just talking. Isaac continued to work at the ranch, and Penelope kept her job at the general store. They saved every penny they could, dreaming of the day when they could buy their own land. In January, Isaac came home to find Penelope sitting at the table with a strange expression on her face. "What is wrong?" he asked immediately, crossing to her side. "Nothing is wrong," she said slowly. "Isaac, I think I might be pregnant." He stared at her. "But I thought you said—" "I know what I said. And I was told I could never have children. But my courses are late and I have been feeling sick in the mornings, and I think maybe the doctor was wrong. Or maybe," she looked up at him with wonder in her eyes, "maybe this is a miracle." Isaac dropped to his knees beside her chair and took her hands in his. "Are you sure?" "Not completely. But Isaac, I think so. I really think so." He pulled her into his arms, feeling tears sting his eyes. "A baby. Penelope, we are going to have a baby." "If I am right," she said, but she was smiling through her own tears. "If my body can carry it, if 100 different things go right instead of wrong." "They will," Isaac said fiercely. "I know they will." He was terrified, absolutely terrified. What if something went wrong? What if she lost the baby? What if her past injuries caused complications? But underneath, the fear was a joy so profound that it made him dizzy. The doctor confirmed it a week later. Penelope was indeed pregnant, about 8 weeks along. He warned them that given her medical history, the pregnancy would be considered high risk, and she would need to be careful. But he also said that the baby seemed to be growing well, and there was no reason to think she could not carry to term. Isaac became fiercely protective. He did not want Penelope working at the store, did not want her lifting anything heavier than a teacup, did not want her doing anything that might put her or the baby at risk. Penelope found his hovering both exasperating and endearing. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one evening after he had insisted on carrying the laundry basket for her. "I know," Isaac said, "but you are the most precious thing in my world, and that baby is part of you. Let me take care of you both." She softened at that, reaching up to cup his cheek. "We are lucky to have you." "I am the lucky one," Isaac replied, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Spring came, and with it came the land they had been dreaming of. A farmer north of town was selling 40 acres, and Isaac's savings combined with a loan from the bank was just enough to buy it. The land came with a small cabin that needed work and a barn that was more holes than walls, but it was theirs. They moved in on a bright April morning, and Penelope stood in the doorway of the cabin with her hands on her swelling belly and tears streaming down her face. "This is really ours?" she asked. "Every inch of it," Isaac confirmed. "We own the land, the cabin, that terrible barn that I am going to have to completely rebuild. It is all ours, Penelope, our home." She turned to him and kissed him fiercely. "I love you so much." "I love you too," he said. "Both of you." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Isaac worked on fixing up the cabin and rebuilding the barn, while Penelope did what she could to make the inside of the cabin into a home. Their neighbors helped, bringing food and supplies and offering their labor. The Chamberlains, who Isaac had worked for, gave them 3 cows and a dozen chickens as a wedding gift. Old Mr. Peterson gave Penelope a rocking chair he said had belonged to his late wife, perfect for a nursery. In July, during the hottest week of the summer, Penelope went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Isaac thought he might lose her. But she was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and when the sun rose on July 20, 1877, their son was born. They named him Thomas after Isaac's father. He was small and red and perfect, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that would eventually turn the same brown as Isaac's. When the midwife placed him in Penelope's arms, Isaac saw a look of pure wonder cross his wife's face. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "You are my miracle baby. My impossible, wonderful miracle." Isaac sat beside her on the bed, one arm around her shoulders, the other gently touching his son's tiny hand. "He is perfect," he said. "You are perfect. I cannot believe this is my life." "Our life," Penelope corrected. "This is our life, Isaac. The one we built together." They settled into the rhythms of parenthood, learning as they went. Thomas was a good baby, healthy and content, and he grew like a weed. Penelope bloomed in motherhood. All the hard edges that had been there when she first arrived in Nebraska City, finally smoothed away by love and security and peace. Isaac threw himself into building their farm. He planted crops, expanded their small herd of cattle, and worked from sunup to sundown to make their land prosper. It was hard work, backbreaking at times, but he had never been happier. Every evening he came home to a wife he adored and a son who was the light of his life. When Thomas was 18 months old, Penelope discovered she was pregnant again. This time there was less fear and more joy, a quiet confidence that they could handle whatever came their way. Their daughter, Emma, was born in the spring of 1879, an easier birth than her brother's had been. She had Penelope's green eyes and a disposition that was somehow both sweet and stubborn. The years rolled by, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their children's lives. Thomas's first words, Emma's first steps, birthdays and holidays celebrated with joy and laughter. The farm prospered under Isaac's careful management. They added more land, more cattle, built a proper barn, and expanded the cabin into a real house. In 1881, Penelope discovered she was pregnant for a 3rd time, a surprise that delighted them both. Their second son, James, was born in February of 1882, right in the middle of a snowstorm that left them snowed in for 3 days. He was a placid baby who rarely cried, content to watch the world with solemn eyes. The children grew up knowing they were loved, absolutely and unconditionally. Isaac taught Thomas and James to ride and rope, to care for the animals and work the land. Penelope taught Emma to read and cook, to sew and keep house, but she also made sure her daughter knew she could do anything her brothers could do if she set her mind to it. Sometimes, on quiet evenings after the children were in bed, Isaac and Penelope would sit on the porch and marvel at how far they had come. From that hot July day in 1876, when she had rolled into town in a dusty wagon, to this life they had built together, full of love and laughter and purpose. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Penelope asked one such evening. "When you walked up to my wagon and offered to help all the time," Isaac admitted. "I think about how close I came to not crossing that street. What if I had just stayed where I was? What if I had minded my own business?" "But you did not," Penelope said, reaching over to take his hand. "You crossed that street and you said my journey ends with you. And you were right, Isaac. That hard, painful journey I had been on, it ended that night. Everything that came after, this beautiful life we built, it all started because you were brave enough to cross a street and kind enough to help a stranger." "You were never really a stranger," Isaac said. "From the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you. Like my soul knew yours was out there waiting." "That is very romantic for a cattle rancher," Penelope teased. "I am allowed to be romantic about my wife," Isaac replied, "especially when she is the most beautiful woman in Nebraska." "Even with this?" Penelope asked, touching the scar on her face. "It had faded over the years, but it would always be there." "Especially with that," Isaac said firmly. "That scar is part of your story, part of what made you into the incredible woman you are. I would not change a single thing about you, Penelope." She leaned over to kiss him, soft and sweet. "I love you. I love you too. Always and forever." As the 1880s rolled on, their family continued to thrive. Thomas grew into a serious young man who loved the land as much as his father did. Emma was bright and curious, always reading or asking questions about how things worked. James was the peacemaker, gentle and kind, always looking out for his siblings. In 1885, when Thomas was 8 and starting to take on more responsibilities around the farm, he asked his mother about her scar. She had been expecting the question for years, and she sat down with all 3 of her children and told them the truth. Not all of it. They were still too young for the worst details, but enough that they understood where she had come from and what she had survived. "Your father saved me," she told them. "Not by fighting some villain or doing something dramatic. He saved me by seeing past the scar and the fear and the pain to the person I was underneath. He saved me by being kind and patient and loving. He showed me that I deserved good things, that I deserved to be happy. And because of that, I have you 3 and this beautiful life and more joy than I ever thought possible." "Were you scared when you came here?" Emma asked. "Terrified," Penelope admitted. "I did not know if I could start over, if anyone would accept me. But your father crossed a street and offered to help, and everything changed." "Papa is the bravest person I know," Thomas said seriously. "He is," Penelope agreed. "But you know what? So am I." It took me a long time to realize it, but leaving that old life behind and starting fresh took a kind of courage I did not know I had. And I want you 3 to know that you come from brave stock, from survivors and fighters and people who do not give up even when things are hard. The children absorbed this information solemnly, and Isaac, who had been listening from the doorway, felt his heart swell with love and pride. His wife was an amazing mother, and their children were growing up with values and strength that would serve them well. In 1887, a drought hit Nebraska hard. The crops withered in the fields and many farmers lost everything. Isaac and Penelope struggled along with their neighbors, but they had been careful over the years, saving money for hard times. They made it through, though it was touch and go for a while. During those difficult months, Isaac saw another side of his wife emerge. Penelope organized the women of the area to help the families who were struggling the most. She coordinated donations of food and clothing, helped care for children whose parents were too exhausted or desperate to cope. She was a force of nature, this woman who had once been so broken, and Isaac fell in love with her all over again. When the drought finally broke and the rains came, there was a community celebration in town. Isaac and Penelope danced under the stars while their children played with the other kids, and Isaac thought about that first night when he had told her that her journey ended with him. "I was wrong, you know," he told her as they swayed to the music. "About what?" "When I said your journey ends with me. It did not end. It just changed direction. We have been on this journey together, building this life, raising these kids, weathering storms both literal and figurative, and I cannot wait to see where it takes us next." Penelope smiled up at him, her face lit by lantern light, the scar just another line in a face he loved more than life itself. "Wherever it goes, as long as I am with you, I will be home." The years continued to pass, bringing both challenges and joys. In 1889, Penelope's skills with numbers and organization led to her being asked to serve on the school board, the first woman in the county to hold such a position. Isaac was so proud he could have burst, and he told everyone who would listen about his brilliant wife. Thomas, at 12, was already as tall as his mother and showing signs of the man he would become. He was responsible and hardworking, and he had inherited his father's way with animals. Emma, at 10, was top of her class and had announced her intention to become a teacher. James, at 7, was still the family's peacemaker, always quick with a hug or a joke when someone was feeling down. In 1890, Isaac's hard work and smart management paid off in a big way. The farm had grown to over 200 acres, they had a healthy herd of cattle, and they were one of the most prosperous families in the county. Isaac was offered a position on the town council, which he accepted with the understanding that he would be taking his wife's advice on most decisions. "You are the smart one," he told Penelope. "I just do what you tell me." "That is not true," she protested. "You are one of the smartest men I know." "Maybe, but you are smarter, and together we make a pretty good team." That summer, they took their children to Omaha for the first time, a trip that took 2 days by train. The kids were amazed by the big city, and Penelope and Isaac enjoyed showing them a world beyond their farm and small town. But they were all happy to return home, to the land they loved and the life they had built. In 1892, tragedy struck when a fire broke out in town, destroying several buildings including the general store where Penelope had worked all those years ago. Mr. Peterson, now in his 80s, lost everything. Without hesitation, Isaac and Penelope invited him to come live with them. He spent his final years in comfort on their farm, surrounded by family and love, and when he passed in 1894, he left everything he had saved to Thomas, Emma, and James. The children were growing up fast. Thomas, at 17, was already courting a neighbor girl named Sarah, much to Emma's delight and James's disgust. Emma, at 15, was helping to teach at the local school while still attending classes herself. James, at 12, had discovered a talent for drawing and spent hours sketching the farm and the animals. In 1895, Penelope turned 40. It seemed impossible that nearly 20 years had passed since she had rolled into Nebraska City, scared and scarred and alone. Isaac threw her a party, inviting half the county, and she was surrounded by friends and family who loved her. During the party, Mrs. Walsh, who was now in her 70s and had retired from running the boarding house, pulled Penelope aside. "You remember that first day?" she asked. "When you came to me looking like you had been through hell and back?" "I remember," Penelope said. "I remember being so scared and so tired and not sure if I had made a terrible mistake coming here. I knew the moment I saw you and Isaac together that you were going to be all right. Mrs. Walsh said. The way he looked at you, like you were the most precious thing he had ever seen, and the way you looked at him, like you wanted to trust him but were not quite ready. I have seen a lot of people come and go in my years, but you two were special. He saved my life, Penelope said simply. In every way that matters. And you saved his, Mrs. Walsh replied. He was lonely before you came, just going through the motions. You gave him purpose and love and a family. You saved each other. That night, after the party was over and the children were in bed, Isaac found Penelope standing in their bedroom, looking at herself in the mirror. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how different my life is from what I thought it would be," she said. "When I was married to Henry, I thought that was all I would ever have. Pain and fear and just trying to survive from one day to the next. I could not imagine anything else. And now I have everything I never dared to dream of. A husband who loves me, children who make me proud every single day, a home that is truly mine, friends, respect, joy. So much joy, Isaac." "You deserve all of it," Isaac said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You deserve this and so much more." She turned in his arms to face him. "We built something beautiful, did we not?" "The most beautiful thing in the world," Isaac agreed. "A life full of love. There is nothing more important than that." In 1897, Thomas married his sweetheart Sarah in a wedding that was the social event of the season. Isaac walked his daughter-in-law down the aisle since her own father had passed, and Penelope cried through the entire ceremony. A year later, they welcomed their first grandchild, a boy named Isaac after his grandfather. Emma graduated from the Teachers College in 1898 and took a position teaching in Nebraska City. She still lived at home, riding to town each day, but she was building a life and career of her own. She had suitors, but she was in no hurry to marry, wanting to establish herself first. James, at 16, shocked everyone by announcing that he wanted to go to art school in Chicago. It was a bold dream for a farm boy from Nebraska, but Isaac and Penelope encouraged him. They had worked hard so their children could have choices, and if James wanted to be an artist, they would support him. As the 19th century drew to a close, Isaac and Penelope found themselves entering a new phase of life. They were no longer the young couple struggling to build a farm. They were established, prosperous, respected members of the community. Their children were grown or nearly so, making their own ways in the world. One evening in the summer of 1899, they rode out to the bluff where Isaac had first told Penelope he loved her, all those years ago. It looked much the same, though they were both older now, their hair touched with gray, their faces lined with the years. "You ever regret it?" Penelope asked. "Taking a chance on a scarred widow with a traumatic past and no prospects?" Isaac looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Regret marrying the love of my life and having the most incredible family anyone could ask for. Regret building a life that has brought me more happiness than I ever thought possible. No, Penelope, I have never regretted a single moment, even the hard parts. The drought, the struggles, the nights we were not sure we would make it, especially those parts," Isaac said, "because we got through them together and they made us stronger. Every challenge we faced as a team. That is what marriage is, Penelope. It is not just the good times, though God knows we have had plenty of those. It is facing the hard times together and coming out the other side still holding hands." "I love you," Penelope said. "I have loved you for 23 years, and I will love you for 23 more and however many we get after that. I am holding you to that," Isaac said, pulling her close. "Forever, Penelope, that is how long I plan to love you." The new century brought changes. Thomas and Sarah gave them 2 more grandchildren, girls they named Penelope and Emily. Emma fell in love with the new doctor in town, a kind man named Robert who respected her intelligence and independence. They married in 1901, and Emma continued to teach even after the wedding, a source of great pride for Penelope. James thrived in Chicago, his art starting to gain recognition. He came home every summer, bringing sketches and paintings that captured city life in ways that amazed his farm family. He had found his calling, and Isaac and Penelope were thrilled for him. In 1905, Isaac turned 55 and decided it was time to step back from some of the harder physical labor. Thomas had been running most of the day-to-day operations of the farm for years anyway, and he was more than capable. Isaac and Penelope began to travel a bit, taking trips to places they had always wanted to see. They went to San Francisco and saw the ocean for the first time. They visited James in Chicago and saw his art displayed in a real gallery. They took a steamship down the Mississippi to New Orleans, ate food they could not pronounce, and danced to music that was nothing like what they had back in Nebraska. But they always came home, back to the farm and the land and the family they had built. Because that was where their hearts were, in that little piece of Nebraska that they had turned from a dream into a reality. In 1910, when Penelope turned 55, they threw another party, even bigger than the first one. All three of their children were there with their families. Thomas and Sarah had 4 children now, ranging from 12 to 2. Emma and Robert had 3, all boys who were terrors according to their mother and angels according to their grandmother. James had brought his fiancée, a fellow artist named Claire who fit into the family like she had always been there. At the party, Thomas stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us what love looks like, what commitment looks like, what building a life together looks like. Everything good in my life, I owe to you too and the example you set. So thank you for everything." Emma added her own toast. "To Mama, who showed me that a woman can be strong and soft at the same time, that we can be survivors and still be gentle, that our scars do not define us, but the way we rise above them does. You are my hero, Mama." James finished it off. "To Papa, who always believed in me even when my dreams seemed crazy, who told me it was okay to be different, to want different things, to forge my own path. You gave me roots and wings, Papa, and I will never forget that." Isaac and Penelope stood together, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and friends, and they both had tears streaming down their faces. This life, this beautiful, messy, joyful life, was more than they had ever dreamed possible. As they danced together later, the same way they had danced so many times before, Penelope said, "You told me my journey ended with you that night, but really it was just beginning." "Our journey," Isaac corrected. "And it is not over yet. We have got plenty more adventures ahead of us. Promise, I promise. Forever and always, Penelope, you and me." The years continued to roll by, bringing grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. Isaac and Penelope grew older, but their love never dimmed. They held hands while walking to the barn. They still kissed each other goodnight every evening. They still sat on the porch on summer nights, talking about everything and nothing. In 1925, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. It was a huge celebration, with family coming from all over the country. Thomas was there with his grown children and their families. Emma came with Robert and their boys, all of whom were now married with children of their own. James and Claire brought their 2 children, both of whom had inherited their parents' artistic talents. There were over 50 people at the celebration, all of them connected by the love of 2 people who had taken a chance on each other all those years ago. Isaac was 75 now, his hair completely white, his body bent from years of hard work. Penelope was 70, still beautiful, the scar on her face just another part of her story. During the celebration, their oldest granddaughter asked Penelope what the secret was to 50 years of marriage. "There is no secret," Penelope said. "It is choosing to love each other every single day, even on the days when it is hard. It is being willing to forgive and be forgiven. It is building a life together one day at a time and never taking each other for granted. Your grandfather and I, we have had our struggles, our disagreements, our hard times, but we always came back to love. That is what matters." "Tell me about how you met," the granddaughter asked. So Penelope told the story one more time, about rolling into Nebraska City in a dusty wagon, about a cowboy who crossed a street to help her, about falling in love with a man who saw past her scars to the person she was inside. "He told me that my journey ended with him that night," Penelope said. And in a way, he was right. The hard journey, the painful one, that ended. But a new journey began, one full of love and joy and adventure, and it has been the greatest journey of my life. Isaac passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1928, just a few months after his 78th birthday. He died in the house he had built, in the bed he had shared with his wife for over 50 years, surrounded by the family he adored. Penelope was holding his hand when he took his last breath, and though her heart broke, she knew he had lived a good life, a full life, a life rich with love. She stood at his grave and told him that she would see him again someday, but not yet. She still had work to do, grandchildren to spoil, great-grandchildren to meet. She would live for both of them until it was her turn to go. Penelope lived another 7 years, dying quietly in her sleep in the summer of 1935 at the age of 80. Her children found her in the morning, a smile on her face, her hand outstretched as if reaching for someone. They buried her next to Isaac, under a tree they had planted together 50 years before. On her gravestone, beneath her name and the dates of her life, they carved the words Isaac had said to her that first night, "Your journey ends with me." And beneath that, the words Penelope had said back, "and begins anew." The farm stayed in the family for generations, passed down from Thomas to his children to their children. The story of Isaac and Penelope became family legend, told to each new generation as an example of what true love looks like. The cabin where they had lived was preserved and turned into a family museum of sorts, filled with photographs and letters and mementos of a life well lived. And sometimes, on summer evenings when the light is just right, people say you can see 2 figures on the porch of that old cabin, holding hands and looking out over the land they loved. Whether it is just a trick of the light or something more, no one can say for sure. But the people who see it always smile, because they know it is Isaac and Penelope, still together after all these years, still in love. Still on the journey they started that hot July day in 1876, when a wagon rolled into town with a scarred widow, and a cowboy crossed a street to help her, telling her that her journey ended with him that night. He had been right in ways he could not have imagined. Her journey of pain and fear had ended that night, and a new journey had begun, one that lasted a lifetime and beyond. A journey of love and hope and the kind of happiness that only comes when 2 people find each other against all odds and decide to build a life together, no matter what challenges they might face. It was a journey that created a legacy that would last for generations, a testament to the power of kindness, courage, and love. It was a journey that showed that sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them, when we are at our lowest point and someone reaches out a hand to help us up. Isaac had reached out his hand that day in 1876, and Penelope had taken it, and together they had created something beautiful and lasting and true. Their love story became the foundation for a family that grew and prospered, each generation carrying forward the values they had instilled: kindness, hard work, loyalty, and above all, love. The farm they had built from almost nothing became a symbol of what was possible when two people committed to each other and to building a life together. And though both of them had been gone for many years, their presence was still felt in every corner of that land, in every story told about them, in every moment when a family member chose love over fear, hope over despair, connection over isolation. They had shown everyone who came after them that it did not matter where you started, or what scars you carried, or how broken you thought you were. What mattered was that you kept going, that you opened your heart to love when it came, that you built something lasting and good with whatever materials life gave you. Isaac and Penelope had done that, and in doing so, they had created not just a family but a legacy of love that would endure long after they were gone, a testament to the truth that real love never dies. It just transforms, becoming part of the land and the sky and the very air itself, living on in the hearts and lives of everyone it touched. Their story ended with Penelope's death in 1935, but in another way, it never ended at all, because love like theirs does not end. It echoes through time, inspiring and guiding and reminding everyone who hears it that the journey of love is the greatest journey of all, and that when you find someone who sees you, really sees you, with all your scars and fears and broken places, and loves you anyway, you have found something rare and precious and worth holding on to with everything you have.